Alright, Dragonhunt. So, my initial thoughts on it, I like to kind of put a few words out there. My initial thoughts on this one was, this game that's almost defies criticism, in the sense that any critique of it is going to kind of come up with, well, that's not a very exciting game, but it always ends up being more fun than when the sum of the systems when you analyze them. But then I began to realize, you know what? I think I've been too harsh on this game in some ways. Let me explain here. So there really aren't a lot of big strategic choices here. That's for certain. There's a false choice, right? Between, hey, do I want to try to go for a long game by taking the opponent's villages and building up my forces, or do I want to just worry about the dragon almost exclusively? And worrying about the dragon almost exclusively means positioning yourself near, the mountain and hoping he comes a little bit your way so that you can really pummel the crap out of him with all your initial forces. And again, you're going to get that same kind of setup that you do in the initial game each time you get your replacement points, I believe. I'm not positive, but I think so. Maybe it's your reinforcements. I don't know. Either reinforcements or replacements. One of them gets set up. It's reinforcements. The replacements go back into your home areas each time. So if you do capture a lot of territory, you'll get a lot of potential to reinforce the mountains heavily, the area around the volcano heavily, and thus give you, on the second hand or third hand or whatever, a chance to try to hit the dragon brimstone a little bit more quickly, a little bit more effectively than you would if you didn't go that way. But on the other hand, you're passing on your first shot at doing so. As we saw, it's possible to win on the first hand of cards. I didn't think that would have been the case. Kind of glad it is, because it's not a great game solo. But where I was going is, there is actually a significant amount of making little decisions as to how much you want to risk in positioning and attacking other people to get that position. What I never really considered too much, because people were always, in games that I've played, almost always going after each other's villages, when this is your goal, being near Brimstone so you can take him out, was that, well, there's still room for conflict and positioning, etc., right around the volcanic mountain itself, which means there is still something going on here. I saw that with some of the players, where they were trying to grab more of the territory so that they could slide their forces into place and get the hit on Brimstone. And I think I have just not seen many games end up that way. So, like a number of times when I do something on video, it seems to spark different kinds of thinking in my head. So maybe I've grown a little bit fonder of at least the thought processes in this game. That's the biggie there. Let me talk a little about components, and I'll go into the rules, discussion of the rules. The board's one of these crappy-ass hard one-piece travesties by Avalon Hill. These things warp like mad. They're just really crappy. I wish they had used paper maps or their old-style folding maps. These were just shit. Counters, nothing inspiring about them. Some of the men-at-arms will be missing their combat strength, but they function. It might be difficult. Sometimes it's difficult to see what a counter is, but again, there aren't that many different types, so it's pretty easy to have. The little special critters are kind of cool. They're done in more colors, so you can kind of recognize them and view them a little better. And they add flavor to the game as well, which you can't see in one playing, but each time you play, you've got a different little tools out there to help you on those tactical problems you're going to be facing. The cards, this is the old style perforated, rip it apart. I think they may have come pre-ripped, but I'm not positive. Probably not. So the mechanism of the bidding cards, this is a very Euro mechanism, and when I saw this game, I thought, oh, cool. That was back in the day when I really liked, this is a neat new way of doing things, and you wouldn't see a lot of neat new ways of doing things. Now, there's just overload of neat new ways of doing things. So, I've grown kind of a sort of jaded atmosphere about anytime I see something that's trying to do something completely new. Once upon a time you'd get one game a year or something that tried to do something neat like this. Here's what's the problem with this one, and this is what I'm going to aim from now on at every neat little new mechanism. And I've been doing, more and more because there's this Eurofication of games. to take, mutate a Scott term. The problem is that it has absolutely nothing to anything that it's supposed to represent. It is just a game mechanism, and that is it. It doesn't do anything else. It doesn't help you understand that, there are resources underneath this that are somehow being bid or something like that. It's just some mechanism to determine who goes first and give you this weird little game that you can play within the game. It's like, resolving a gunfight with a poker hand. What the hell? Who cares? I mean, okay, that's neat, I guess. But whatever. And then the dragon cards, well, these are a significant bit of variable in this, in an already fairly random game. But they do some cool stuff. You saw some of them. You didn't see a do or die. The do or die table's kind of cool. But doesn't tend to have tremendously good effects. So, I don't know. You're able to wound Brimstone on a lower number than you are on, say, the second or third wound, but it puts less dragon cards in play. I don't know. I'm not sure. That ends up just being kind of re-roll it and we'll see. And you'll probably end up in worse position. All right, as to the game itself, let's start looking at some of the ideas here. Brimstone's actual flying and movement and everything, this is all pretty much random. It's not completely random. You have some control over it. You can kind of edge him towards your stuff, which is what you usually want to do so that you have a chance of taking him out. The fantastic beings, these are kind of cool. So these guys help you decide what point you want to bid. And in a game sense, this bidding the cards, this is where a lot of the fun and excitement comes from. So even though I can say, well, what the hell is that supposed to mean? As a game attribute itself, it is kind of cool the way it works in this game. So you can't complain about it too much. I think it's one of those things that when I say, well, any criticism that I'll level against this, the game is actually more fun than that criticism. I think a lot of it is based on this because you're trying to do a number of things. First of all, if you're going after Brimstone, you want to go early in the turn so you can hit him. If you want to control the special critter and be able to do neat things with it, you want to bid low so that you get that first critter control count. But you have this weird piece of what I'm doing. This weird kind of, all right, I got to make sure that I don't just bid low, but I bid low so that I don't tie anyone. And that adds this kind of psychological guessing game into the whole thing. So that's probably, the thing that I complain about most as being well, what the hell does this have to do with the game, is actually the thing that adds the most fun to the game, perhaps. And it's the reason why that there are simple Euro games where this kind of activity is sort of the core to the game, where they strip away, moving the pieces on the field and doing the battles out and everything. And that's a different kind of choice. But this is almost a hybrid game when you start adding mechanisms like that. The actual player's turn, well, here, the amount you bid is the amount you're allowed to kind of do in terms of movement. That is, again, difficult to reconcile with the reality on the ground, but you can say it's all very abstracted, and, once you say these don't mean anything, it's like rolling dice for movement at that point. If you rolled dice and then moved that many movement points throughout your pieces at your choosing, that would be as silly a procedure. But this is more fun in the sense of adding this little element of guessing and such on into it. Otherwise, it's kind of like a free-flowing wargame-ish type thing where you can move around. There's no zones of control or anything like that. And you can gang up on pieces. The combat is really, really simplistic. You're just rolling off against each other and comparing strength. It works fine for this. It adds a decent element of risk to the game, and I think that's the flavor of the game. There's this... you can almost never assure anything, and therefore it might be worth taking really low odds attacks on the basis of, well, it could work. And that also adds to, I think, the fun element there, just to try to prove myself wrong. Then the way the hands work to replenish the cards and then to replenish the troops gives some reason for you to want to control more villages and castles. A little bit more so, the reinforcements that come in give a better reason. You can get more pieces on the board quicker. The game isn't going to be a long game, no matter what. I mean, it's not gonna draw out to the point where you use up all your reinforcements and you're playing for a few more hands after that. Somebody picks up those 3 wounds eventually. It's just a matter of fate. Now, the more they concentrate on killing the dragon, winning the game, the more likely that's going to happen. But quite often, almost always, I've seen players think there's got to be more to this, including myself, and going after the villages, trying to get a dominant position, thinking the dragon's particularly hard to kill. He's not that hard to kill. You just got to keep throwing shit at him, and eventually you get your wounds, and then you can make your final attempt. And that's something that maybe has sort of an intuitive dissonance that prevents you from playing the game optimally for a long time until you kind of realize that. And if you're stupid like me, it takes you a long time. This isn't something that I'd ever suspect someone would pull out, every game session, every other game session. I'm not sure what kind of game gets that kind of desire. I know for our group, some 18xx games, Crayon Rails for some people, created this kind of desire. This is what I want to do every time. For me, obviously that's not going to work, but I've very seldomly seen people saying, I feel like I was, unable to accomplish my strategy because I didn't understand the game quite well enough. I want another shot at it. that's one of the things that helps drive people, to want to play again right away. You certainly might walk away with, I got screwed by bad luck. But that's, at least in the groups that I'm used to, very seldomly something that makes you want to, let's play it again right away. I've seen that with Talisman, but part of the reason for that may be Talisman's such a bitch to set everything up that you say, fine, I don't want to waste all that effort. This game went quickly, let's play another damn one of it. Anyway, this is an interesting little diversion. As I've said, I've played it a decent number of times opposed, and I don't think I've seen many people walk away from it at all dissatisfied. We had one person who would every now and then glom onto one aspect of a game and just despise it for that aspect. And I think he played this once and hated it for some little thing or another. I've got no idea what. But other than that, I think everybody I've played it with has always kind of enjoyed the game, at least somewhat. If you don't try to win, though, if nobody tries to win, it will drag on a little too long. It'll overstay its welcome. In this case, it probably left a little too early. I would have liked to have shown more with how the production works and what kind of advantage that gives you. Basically, the reinforcements give you an opportunity to set up again and hit the dragon again for another wound attempt, as you were set up at the beginning of the game. So, it's likely whatever you get in your reinforcements, whatever extension you get by having another... See, another village isn't terribly useful. That's just more men-at-arms. And other than the fact that you can get them close real quick, what you really want is another castle, because that gives you the heavier knights that are capable of actually killing the dragon. Otherwise, you have to expend movement points to set yourself up around the mountain with your replacements and such, huh? And that can be more difficult, and it's also almost as easy to go, or perhaps easier, to go out and take something you can certainly take, like, another person's stuff, or fight him over his attempt to take your stuff. All I'm saying is, overall, you need to make sure that you understand what your goal in the game actually is. And in order to get there, you don't have to take much. I don't know. Anyway, more fun than it seems like it should be. That's about what I'd say with it. It's not a great game, but it's also certainly something that you can fill a gaming day with without feeling too terribly hosed by it. It's always going to give you kind of a mediocre fun experience, though.